great instrument that talks about partner tooling and capabilities that we have around that as well. Certainly something I would like you to have a look at. So we did previously also talk about these very important migration phases. It's like, what do I need to go do first? First of all, most important thing is really discover what are your database assets. And there's a variety of tools that allow you to do that kind of network research and identify what servers you have running. You can then start assessing that workload. But in pretty much every migration project, you want to do an initial conversion of the source schema and then map that and see if that schema works to the target database. A very common step is first to start fixing things that might provide some form of incompatibility on the source schema prior to putting that into a target and going to the middle stage, which is the actual migration stage. Now, in that migration stage, the application workload could actually be the determining factor on whether or not you want to do a live migration or whether you want to perform an offline migration. Offline migrations are certainly the easiest to perform, but one of the challenges you might have there is how you're going to be keeping your data in sync. So therefore, maybe a live migration might be the best of choice in order to first move the schema, move the database objects and everything associated with it, perform a data sync by using forms of replication or other capabilities such as using Azure Data Factory to keep data in sync, and then you're going to be performing that initial cutover. Now, not uncommon is this post-migration phase is you have to do some application remediation, might have to change some connection strings, but you closely want to monitor some of these post-migration or even database scenarios you have around upgrades to say like, hey, I want to go to some additional optimization. And so we have some tooling on that to identify what are my worst performing queries, what are some of the other considerations in terms of high availability, very common as part of this migration step. Now, what does that mean with regards to a PostgreSQL migration over to Azure? It actually means that before you're going to be jumping in, doing that actual migration is let's go ahead again and provision that Azure destination, spin up the servers, spin up the database, which of course could be done by using the Azure portal or interface, or you have the capability to perform that using Azure CLI, which could be Bash. You could be using PowerShell to accomplish that as well, or there might be Azure Resource Manager deployment that you would actually take to do this. So in this migration workflow, configuring your existing environment, exporting the schema, provisioning your Azure destination is a very common scenario you've also seen with the MySQL deployment. And then you're performing the actual migration could be done on export, import, dump and restore, or you could be creating a migration project. We've seen in the previous demo, and we'll reiterate and review this in this module as well, to create a migration project, run the migration activity, and then also cut over to the new database prior to running that optimization. Now, when we think about provisioning the PostgreSQL servers, again, it's important to understand what are my usage scenarios and what are my usage capabilities. And so I have the ability to deploy a single server, or I have the possibility to also deploy a hyperscale server that really gives you that massive deployment of a cluster, spinning up the underlying architectures that allows you to do sharding. One of the things that we also did is just like we had with MySQL, and it's not referenced on this slide, but you'll see it as I go over to the demo around provisioning. You also now have the capability in preview that allows you to be flexible server on PostgreSQL, and you also have the possibility to do a deployment of a PostgreSQL workload on Azure Arc. So we'll have a look at that, and let's switch over to the demo for that. So as we're looking into the Azure portal, I have my Azure databases for PostgreSQL. I can get there to the blade on the side here, or I can actually go look for that resource. And so what I will be doing first is I'm going to be creating and deploying